Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our podcast. I am Tanvi, an AI educator with Coding and More, and today we have with us Auxane Boch, who is currently an associate researcher for ethics in AI. Hi, Auxane, how are you?
Hi Tanvi. Thank you for having me. I'm fine,
Pleasure
thanks.
to have you here too. So, Auxane, can you please give us a brief introduction of yourself and what you do?
Yeah, sure. I'm a cyber psychologist. So I study the interactions between humans and technology in general. And I was first specialized in video game psychology, and now I'm doing AI ethics, or artificial intelligence ethics. And I'm specializing again in video game, but also in social robotics.
Lovely. And you're based in Munich?
I'm in Munich. I'm at the Institute for Ethics in Artificial Intelligence at the Technical University of Munich, where I'm doing my PhD.
Lovely. Okay. So, jumping right into what we are discussing today, what type of AI or artificial intelligence do you see in video games today?
So, in video games, you will have different types of AI, but most of them are quite simple AIs, if we can say that. So they're not using, for example, deep learning or not so much. What we see mainly today in video games are AIs to make the environment adapt a bit more to the user and make the experience a bit more enjoyable. A good example is Red Dead Redemption 2, but we can get back to that later.
Okay, so that's a game where you're saying the experience, AI is there to enhance the experience of the players.
Exactly. And just by modifying a bit the environment, there is a little anecdote. There was a video on internet of a gamer playing Red Dead Redemption 2, and he was just shooting in the sky to scare one of the non-playable characters. And actually, because the AI was making sure there was birds everywhere, he shot a bird. And that was not at all on purpose, and that was fully random, but just because the AI was actually making sure the environment was adapting. So
Wow. So that is a thing. Wow. Okay.
it
Great.
is.
So, you already mentioned the name of a game, but, our children here, they do play games like Fortnite, Among Us. We hear these names quite frequently from them. So, do
Yeah.
these games also have AI?
So Fortnite does have AIs, and it is mainly seen in the zombie mode. So there is a mode in which, Fortnite is this um, game where you have to be the last one standing, and you have a zombie mode where basically you're on an island in front of only zombies and you have to kill them all. So it's not against other people, it's against an AI. So yeah, the AI powers the zombies in this case. You also have, I think, a small AI in the general environment of Fortnite, but that's not a major one at all. The biggest one would be the zombie one. And otherwise, in Among Us, you don't have an AI as far as I'm aware. So I went to check before the podcast and I didn't find anything about that. But maybe we can give another good example of an AI-powered environment. It would be Zelda Breath of the Wild. So that's a really renowned game that can be played on Switch from Nintendo. And the environment, like in Red Dead Redemption 2, is really AI-powered, which creates a lot of really funny stuff. Apparently, if you put balloons on a boat, and those balloons are helium balloons, the boat starts to fly because the AI knows that balloon is supposed to make stuff fly. So just a simple maths like that.
I'm sure such that experience would be a lot of fun, visually so appealing for the children, right? So AI,
Exactly.
like you're saying, it completely enhances the video viewing experience and just makes it look so much more real, look and feel so much more real.
Exactly, because you have a reaction to your action. So it is a real, in psychology, we call it an interaction. And I think that that's a term everyone knows. When you do an action and you have a reaction, and if your environment reacts to you for the enjoyment of video game, that's a big plus.
That's really interesting to know. But so I think you already explained how AI is making this whole difference in video games with enhancing the viewer experience. But is there something else that it's doing? What is so cool about AI in games?
Well, That's the psychologist in me speaking, but AI in games will make the experience and are making the experience more important for the player. And it matters because a game experience can actually change a behavior, make someone rethink an idea they have. It can make them, like, it can give them an actual experience. That's what I mean. It's not just a virtual one. It can be compared to reading a really good book. I'm sure in the people listening to this podcast, you will have people who love to read, people who love to watch a movie, who love to watch TV shows. And you can learn stuff from those media. And in video games, this is even more enhanced due to the interactional setting of it. So you can actually learn social skills on top of other skills. And that is, I think, something really cool about AI. Now, I'm sorry, I think the next question will be about what the industry is about, but I can already maybe say a few things about that, is that the industry is using AI, especially for that, to make the video games more engaging, to make them better for the player. And we'll see later if there is specifics or not, but yeah.
So I think social skills, right? It's something you mentioned, which is so interesting to know, that children are actually developing skills, social skills while playing these video games. It's not all fun and games. It's fun and games with an added benefit. So any other skills? You mentioned social skills. Anything else that can be takeaways for the children?
Of course. So video games are really great for a lot of things, and not just for children on top of it. So I would advise every adults to play video game as well. But you have first your cognitive skills. So that would be rationality, so being able to deal with a problem, to recognize a problem, reason about it, find solutions, make decisions, quick decisions, analyze the situation really quickly with taking as much data as possible. People don't see how those are really impacted by video games, but a player of Counter-Strike, which is a big first player shooter game, for shooter player game, sorry, is actually something that is actually going to be way better at taking quick decisions and thought about decision than anyone else, just because during the game they do have to. So even your games that don't have such a big narrative and are basically about winning also drive really good cognitive abilities. We can also talk about the competition side, which is really good for some kids because it will make them just always be willing to do better and figure out solutions to do better and be better. Now, we're not talking about toxic competition, but really on purpose and in a sane environment competition. You also have social skills when you work as a team. And I think that's really important to mention. You have a lot of online gaming happening. And usually, I'm going to take the example of World of Warcraft, which is a really worldwide renowned game.
Yes.
You can have your character having one specific quality linked to the race it is. So for example, you can be a healer, or you can be a fighter, or you can be a magician. So you will have different competences. And in a team, you will need basically all of those competences. So everyone learns to work with their strength and other people's strength to make a goal, to reach a goal, to make a mission work. And those skills are actually lately being researched by companies. And I have read a few articles stating that being a gamer today could actually be really good for recruitment. Could make you a plus bonus person in a team because you know how to work together.
Yes, I think absolutely. If all the points you mentioned, I mean, if you have that on your resume by just being, like you're saying, a gamer, then it puts such a positive spin on the whole gaming experience. This is not something that I think I would have put much thought to or thought about in terms of developing so many skills, like you said, cognitive, working in groups, and all of that makes sense. Not only making yourself be somebody else, but by doing that, you are also using your mind, you are engaging yourself, you're getting into the experience completely.
Yeah.
And that's
So
really interesting. Yes.
it's to be thought of like an experience once again. I think the main bad views people have of video games is that they perceive it as only enjoyment, the same way watching a TV show would be only enjoyment. And I would also advocate the TV shows can teach you stuff, but video games have another level due once again to the interactional side of it, and you have to make decisions, you have to do the things. It's not just watching someone else do it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's really, really, really cool.
Absolutely. I think, you've mentioned games which are having this sort of impact on children. They're developing these skills while they're playing them. Do you have any examples for us of games which, actually make a social impact? Are there games being developed like that today, which directly?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a few games. Actually, there is more research than games at the moment, even though games are starting to take that into account, um, about social impact. So once again, keep in mind that a game is an experience. And when you play a game, especially a game in which you will have to make specific moral decisions or narrative decisions, there will be a concept that will apply there, a theory that applies there, which is called identification. It can happen in other types of game, but the most seen would be in narrative video games where your decisions have an impact on the story. And because of this identification, depending on the avatar you're playing or the experience you're having through your avatar, there's going to be an impact on your own perception of reality. So to give you a concrete example, there was a game developed, I think it was in America. I know it was in the Americas, but I think it was in South America they was developed. And it's about being an American person working at the border, so a US border person. And you would have to check every person from Mexico willing to cross towards the US. And in the US, under Donald Trump's mandate, there has been a lot of talk about letting no one come in, etc. So this actually was extremely relevant, and before and at that time. And so playing this game showed to change people's opinion about letting Mexicans in. And the why is really simply because while playing the game, they had to make a decision according to a real life story. Because every non-playable character presenting at the border would have a life story. And for example, it could be a family, a father that needs to feed the children and needs to find a good job. It could be a teenager whose parents are dead and needs to cross to the US to actually get a new life. And it would go from the simplest, oh, I just want to get to the US, to the worst case scenario, where that's like, if we don't do that, I'm going to end up on the streets or whatever. And the people actually, because of this experience, had to rethink their stereotypes for a second and say, okay, so maybe those Mexicans, they're not here to steal our jobs, and maybe they're not just a group that we do not humanize. Maybe they're actually humans. And this can apply to different things in game. And the good news is that it works only positively. Because I know the follow-up questions when I say, oh, this is changing stereotypes for the good, is, oh, so then it can make people aggressive. Good news, a lot of research has been done, and actually nothing has proven to make children violent or anything due to video games. So that is, I think, super positive to notify that your brain is actually an amazing tool and can take distance with situations that are unacceptable. So
Yes, I think absolutely. I mean, I'm sure games like that just teach not only children, like you're saying, right? They teach people, they teach adults about inclusivity, they probably teach them empathy. They're giving them so many other skills, and you're opening, when you gamify something like that, when you take an issue and gamify it, I
Yeah,
think that honestly is can be a power in itself. It's got such
it
a
is.
positive spin to it, so much positive power there.
Yeah,
And
I think the industry does not realize it yet, though. Some of them do. And some of them are working towards this. To talk about one specific game I'm aware of, I studied video game and psychology with the Detroit Become Human game. And I reached out to one of the person in the team which created it to discuss a bit about my research and see if they were okay with me doing what I was doing and if they were interested. And we were looking at changing stereotypes towards technology through playing an android. First of all, it works. It makes people rethink for a second, what is an AI? What can it do? Even though it is super futuristic in the game, it makes you be an android for a second and therefore puts you in their shoes and therefore makes you think about the situation of an AI and how to treat them. So we discussed that with the person in the team at Quantic Dreams. And crazy enough, they had no clue. That's what they wanted to do. They wanted for people to think about the future of technology. They wanted for people to take a second and not think that technology would be slave or anything, but really make a decision according to what they know and experience. So they were really happy that it worked. But to be fair, they had no clue about video game psychology. They had no clue about how this could actually, in the real world, impact people's views in a great way, because as long as you make people be a bit more critical about their decision, I think it's amazing. So yeah, I think industry needs to learn a bit more about this. It's also our job as researchers to share this with them a bit more, that it could go a long distance, I think, if everyone starts doing games for good.
absolutely. I think that right there, where you said games for good, I think that, should be the mantra. I mean, to put psychology to games. And after talking to you right now, I mean, there's been a whole new spin on understanding that concept of how there's so much research being done in that field. And that's great to hear. I mean, it's so positive and it's really great. And I think you've already shed light on so many things with research and what's going on in games. But is there something else where the industry is going with this? You know, something in the future that's going to be really cool for everyone who's playing games to know about?
There is a few things I can think of. So first of all, I think it's important to talk about the future of AI in games. So just AIs themselves. As I mentioned earlier, from what I know and from the conferences I've seen, the industry is not going towards really strong AIs in game at the moment, even though I know some people are researching it. Because if an AI is not too strong, you can predict what it's going to do. Therefore, you can, in your game, predict exactly what your AI is going to be used for. And that's good when you sell a game because you're selling an experience. So if your AI is too strong and starts having way more autonomy, well, maybe you're selling an experience that you're not really sure what it's going to be to the players. And that can be an issue. So right now there is a bit of research being done to see, okay, how far can we go? How far do we know? And yeah, what's the future? So I'm going to bet that I'm going to say, okay, 10, 15 years, we'll have characters in game that are fully AI powered and are way more autonomous than today. That's a bet. I cannot say it's the truth, but I kind of hope for that as well. The second point, I think, is the avatars, right? We were talking about that earlier. The avatars are getting more and more real, and as real as human-like avatars. And this, I think, will be a big change in the game experience, especially if you make an AI power them in any way. because, you know, games are unrealistic at the moment, but let's imagine you make a really, really realistic game, like a movie situation, and, you know, you never know what's going to happen. I think it could be really, really cool for the players.
Yeah, I think our children get so excited when you talk about even the movie Avatar, where you had such realistic animation, and we're hearing the term meta-humans so much more today.
Yeah,
And I also agree with you when you say that it would make the experience so much more immersive
yeah.
to have something like that. But you're saying that's probably 10-15 years away, right? Realistically.
That's Yeah, because the visual of it, the physics of it, we have, right? We can today create physically meta humans. And I'm pretty sure we can AI power them to speak and be basically as good as Alexa, Amazon's Alexa is in the conversations. Now, to give you an idea, from the industry side, what I've heard a lot is that Amazon Alexa is one of the best AI we have at the moment. And if you're using one of those, you can see there is a lot of limitations in the conversations, right? So we're not at this point where our meta humans, even if put in games or whatever virtual environment, will be able to actually be really active or proactive. But in 10-15 years, once again, maybe we'll have something that is really more realistic, and we'll have a real friend that is a virtual friend. Who knows, kind of, once again, what I'm hoping for. Could be super cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be really cool, I think. So I think that's really cool. Having said that, we have this whole video games that will make a great experience. But I know some people who are still wary of being on the internet or having spending so much time on the internet. So is there any downside or something people should be careful of when they're playing games?
When they're playing games, I would say age. I know that I've seen a few parents not really caring what their kids were playing. Please care. That's the first point. Now, I have a rule, and that's my personal opinion and experience, is that until 12 years old, you can make your kid do something. So you can tell them you're not playing this, etc. So before 12 years old, please make sure that all the games they're playing are safe for them. A lot of games are safe, to be fair. It's just don't make them play GTA 3 when they're like 8 years old. You know, just make sure it doesn't go too gore or too sexual or too violent before 12. Once they're 12 years old, from past experience, I'm going to say they'll figure it out without you. They won't need you anymore. And as much as it is scary, because 12 years old is not that old, they're better than you at computer. For most of the people listening to it, they're just better than you. So deal, make your kids understand what matters before, give them the keys. That's all you can do as parents. And yeah, trust them, because they're also really smart. Make them talk to you. Don't force them. Create like a good trust climate, and I think everything goes well if you do that. Now, about the environment of games, because I know this is a second point that is really scary for parents especially.
Yes.
First of all, I think you're right to be a bit worried about it. I wouldn't say scared, but I think you're fully 100% right to at least question this. Once again, if your kid is less than 12, please do make sure that they do not go on weird forums or whatever. In all games, you can have parental settings, at least all games that your kids are supposed to play. So you can definitely make sure that they do not speak to strangers, that they can only speak to their friends online and things like that. And the second point with this environment thing is the data. As I've told you, the problem is not going to be the game, because the artificial intelligences in game and stuff like that do not record important data or private data.
Okay.
But if you go on, I don't know, Steam or the PlayStation Store or things like that, just make sure to go into the settings to check at the privacy rules. once again, it's not a really scary world. It's not, you just need to be careful. You just need to be aware. So it's an effort to make. I understand that it is not easy to everyone and it's something to learn, but please do it for you and your kid. Also teach your kid to do it, because by 12, they're going to know that better than you anyway, and probably be aware of a lot of laws you're not aware of and things like that. So
Yes,
yeah,
I think absolutely agree. I think where you said they need to be more aware, they need to be more careful. That goes for both, right? It goes for parents as well as children. If they're old enough, like you said, they
yeah,
should be more aware. And I'm
yeah,
so glad you gave a really good gist of the things that they should be aware of, going into playing all of these games. And, to be honest, this talk has been so very informative today to understand the perspective of psychology in games, how so much research is being done today in it. And, we know that with all the advancements that are happening in AI today, our gaming experience is only going to get better.
yeah,
But we need to know that, of course, these games are all fun to play. They're educational, they're thought provoking, they're giving so many skill sets to children as well as adults. And I just hope that this continues in a positive way. And, like you said, you
that's
gave a
right.
really good positive spin on video games. And yeah, I hope that our podcast also helped shed light on this today and how AI is playing such a great role in video games today.
Well,
So
thank
thank you
you.
so much, Auxane. This has been very informative. Thank you.
Thank you for having me again. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it and you learned something.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.